Silence is often misunderstood as emptiness, as if it means the absence of words, thoughts, or activity. But true silence is not merely the lack of sound, it is the presence of something much deeper, something alive. When you enter silence, the noise of the world begins to fade, and the constant chatter of the mind slowly dissolves. In that quiet, you realize that what you once thought was silence is not empty at all. It is full, vibrant, and overflowing with presence. This presence has no name, no shape, and yet it feels more real than anything you have ever known. Many seekers throughout history have said that it is only in silence that God can be found. Why? Because as long as the mind is busy, it creates a wall between you and the divine. Every thought is like a veil, a filter, or a curtain that hides the infinite from your direct experience. The moment you stop clinging to thoughts, the moment you allow yourself to rest in stillness, a new dimension opens up. One that is vast, timeless, and boundless. In that stillness, you don't see God with your eyes or hear God with your ears. Instead, you recognize God as the very essence of being itself, the silent witness behind all things. Silence, therefore, is not a passive state, but an active revelation, because it reveals what words cannot say and what thoughts cannot capture. It is the language of the heart, the only space where the infinite can be touched directly. Words are powerful, but they are also limited. Every word is a symbol, pointing towards something but never becoming the thing itself. You can say the word light 1,000 times, but it will never illuminate a dark room. In the same way, you can speak endlessly about God, read countless books, and repeat sacred names, yet none of these words can capture the reality of the divine. God is not an object to be defined, not a concept to be grasped, but the infinite reality beyond all forms. Whenever you try to put the infinite into words, the words break. It is like trying to catch the ocean in a small cup. This is why silence reveals God in a way speech never can. In silence, you are no longer trapped by symbols or definitions. You do not attempt to define or limit, you simply open yourself to what is. The heart begins to perceive directly, without the interference of language. In this direct seeing, you discover that God was never far away, never hidden, never absent. It was only the noise of thoughts and the clinging to words that created the illusion of distance. When those words fall away, when the mind bows in silence, the presence of God becomes undeniable, not as an idea, but as living truth. Silence does not describe God, it discloses God. It unveils what words could only point toward, and in that unveiling, the soul finally tastes the reality it has been longing for. When a seeker enters silence with sincerity, something begins to shift inside. At first, the silence may feel uncomfortable, even heavy, because the mind resists it. The mind is addicted to noise, constantly planning, judging, remembering, or imagining. To sit quietly feels like losing control, and so the mind fights back with restless thoughts. But if the seeker remains patient, the noise gradually fades, like ripples settling on water. In that stillness, the heart begins to awaken. Silence becomes less of an absence and more of a presence, an invisible companion, gentle yet powerful. The seeker notices that in silence, the heart softens, expands, and becomes more sensitive. Compassion arises naturally without effort, because in the absence of thought, separation between self and other dissolves. Love flows more freely, not as an emotion tied to conditions, but as the very nature of being. Silence transforms the heart into a vessel, open to receive the light of the divine. What once felt ordinary now glows with meaning. A bird's song, the breath moving in and out, even the simple act of being alive. The seeker realizes that these are not random occurrences, but signs of a deeper reality shining through. In silence, gratitude blooms effortlessly, because every moment feels like a gift. And in that gratitude, the heart begins to mirror the qualities of God: mercy, love, patience, and beauty. This is why silence is not just empty space. It is a school for the soul, where lessons are not taught through books or lectures, but through direct encounter with the divine presence. Silence transforms the seeker, not by giving more thoughts, but by taking them away, leaving only what is eternal. Silence is often described as the doorway through which the soul enters into communion with God. In the noise of daily life, the divine presence is drowned out by constant distractions, voices of desire, fear, ambition, and memory. These voices shout so loudly that the subtle whisper of eternity cannot be heard. But when silence descends, all these voices lose their power and something deeper begins to emerge. The soul recognizes a presence that is not separate from itself, yet infinitely greater. It is not perceived with the physical senses, but it is undeniable, like the warmth of the sun on your skin, even with your eyes closed. This presence is God, not as a distant concept, but as the very ground of existence. In silence, you no longer search for God as if He were outside you, hidden somewhere far away. Instead, you awaken to the truth that God has always been here, closer than breath, nearer than your own heartbeat. Silence becomes the sacred meeting place, where the finite and the infinite embrace. It is here that prayer deepens, not through words, but through presence. In this stillness, you are not asking, not questioning, not demanding. You are simply being with God, resting in His reality. This kind of silence is the highest form of worship because it removes all barriers, all images, and all conditions, leaving only pure communion. In that communion, the seeker understands that God does not need noise or form to be known. He reveals Himself most clearly in silence. For silence is the language in which eternity speaks to the soul. In the end, silence reveals God because silence is the space where the soul can finally see without distraction, listen without distortion, and rest without fear. It strips away the illusions built by endless thought and returns you to the essence of being. In silence, you come to understand that God is not hidden in complicated philosophies, not trapped in words, and not confined to rituals alone. God is the very life pulsing through you, the very stillness that holds the universe together, the eternal presence that waits patiently beneath the surface of your restless mind. When you surrender to silence, you are not losing anything of value. You are uncovering the treasure that was always there. This is why silence has been cherished by saints, seekers, and mystics throughout time, not as an escape from reality, but as the unveiling of the deepest reality itself. Words can inspire, teachings can guide, but only silence can reveal. It reveals that the separation between you and the divine was never real, only imagined by the mind. Once the chatter falls away, the truth becomes clear. God is not distant, but intimately near. The silence within you is not empty. It is sacred, alive, and overflowing with presence. It is the place where fear dissolves, love expands, and the soul knows its true home. To embrace silence is to open the door to God's reality, not tomorrow, not in some other world, but here and now. And in that realization, life itself becomes prayer. Every breath becomes worship, and every moment becomes a direct encounter with the divine.